The brutality of partition went far beyond communal violence. Not only had the British displaced millions of people and forced the greatest mass migration in history, they had also cleaved a great country into two. One of the most fascinating aspects of studying geography is how scholars that study rivers see them as living beings. They have personalities, will, history, and life in them. The Indus was a river that had long been suffering. Since the middle of the 19th century, it had been going through a series of unnatural changes, as described above, with the introduction of the Punjab Canal colonies. Partition made this worse. When the British Empire receded from the Indian subcontinent in 1947, it left behind more than a jagged border. It cleaved a living river system in two. The Indus River and its tributaries that had irrigated fields, fed civilizations, and defined regions for millennia now flowed through two hostile states, one upstream, the other downstream. The birth of India and Pakistan brought with it the question, who owns a river that does not respect the lines on a map? The geography behind the Indus Waters Treaty is central to understanding its power and fragility. As we have mentioned above, the Indus River system originates in the Tibetan Plateau and flows through the Indian-administered region of Jammu and Kashmir before descending into Pakistan, where it fans out into the fertile plains of Punjab and Sindh before meeting the Arabian Sea. The system consists of 6 rivers, the Indus itself along with the Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Sutlej. At partition, India inherited control of the headwaters of all 6 rivers. The new border placed Pakistan downstream, a precarious position for a nation whose economy was, and remains, overwhelmingly agricultural. In the words of water expert Danish Mustafa, partition turned a hydrographic reality into a geopolitical liability. This upstream-downstream dynamic meant India, at least in theory, could alter or interrupt the flow of rivers on which Pakistan's survival depended. In April 1948, India temporarily stopped the flow of water to Pakistani canals from the Firozepur headworks on the Sutlej, asserting sovereign rights over the eastern rivers. This was a bombshell event that had never before been expected while India was whole. At the time, the operating theory in international relations was the water war's rationale that held countries would go to war when their water resources were threatened. Nehru's India understood this and knew that war would not be worth it for either side. As a result, India and Pakistan became the exception to the rule. Liaquat Ali Khan made a phone call to Nehru requesting the water flow be restored, and Nehru personally intervened with the West Punjab government to have the water up and running again. It was a moment that gave hope to future water-sharing negotiations. But the matter of water is so existential that it left an imprint on the Pakistani imagination. Though the interruption lasted only a few weeks, it sparked panic in Pakistan and revealed the high stakes of river politics. While the water war never went kinetic and both countries maintained diplomatic lines over this issue, the threat did loom large. Recognizing the danger, the World Bank, then known as the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, stepped in. Eugene Black, its president at the time, offered to mediate. Negotiations began in 1952 and stretched on for 8 years. The eventual result was the Indus Waters Treaty, signed in 1960 by Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Pakistani President Ayub Khan in Karachi. The treaty was quite simple. India would retain control of the 3 eastern rivers, the Ravi, Beas and Sutlej. Pakistan would have rights over the 3 western rivers, the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab. While India agreed to allow unrestricted flow of the western rivers to Pakistan, it retained limited rights for domestic, non-consumptive use and to develop run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects that by design cannot store water. As political scientist John Briscoe notes, the treaty is notable in that it allocated not just water but entire rivers, making it unique in the history of international water-sharing agreements. At first glance, it appears India gave away a strategic advantage. So why agree? For starters, it was clear to everyone involved that if an agreement was not reached, there would be war. India had control of the tap at the top, and if they were to use it, Pakistan would feel they had no option but to fight back. Sun Tzu, in The Art of War, describes a concept called death ground, placing one's enemy in a position where they have no choice but to fight, because to not fight means accepting death. India's post-partition leadership was sensible enough to realize that to not have a clearly defined treaty governing the rivers would mean putting Pakistan on death ground. At the signing, Nehru tried to frame India's rationale for signing the treaty as being for peace and stability. He said, "We may have to make some sacrifices to ensure peace in the subcontinent at the occasion." But there were practical considerations as well. India's water needs were being met by the 3 rivers it ended up getting, and the World Bank was offering substantial funding to develop infrastructure that would help both countries manage their allotted rivers. For India, the treaty clarified its rights over the eastern rivers and paved the way for the development of projects like the Bhakra Nangal Dam, which became a symbol of modern India's engineering ambitions. In essence, the treaty exchanged some of India's theoretical control over the western rivers for clear legal authority over the eastern ones. It also got them international goodwill and the funding that came with it. For Pakistan, the treaty was nothing short of existential. At the time of signing, 80% of its irrigated agriculture depended on the Indus system. Without guaranteed access to water, its economy and food security would be devastated. Pakistani negotiators viewed the treaty as a life insurance policy. The funding it unlocked allowed Pakistan to build the Mangla and Tarbela dams, part of a vast replacement works project that re-engineered its irrigation system around the new division of rivers. Even today, over 90% of Pakistan's water use is for agriculture, much of it tied to the Indus basin. The treaty, then, is not just a legal document. It is of vital importance to national security as well as food security. As such, the modern Pakistani economy we know today is possible only because of the Indus Water Treaty. While in both countries, it enabled large-scale agricultural expansion, hydropower generation and rural development, it is disproportionately more important for Pakistan than India.